Hey folks, welcome back to this beginner play-along guide where we are playing as the Achaemenid Persians in the Classical era. This particular episode we're going to talk a little bit about rounding out the Classical era and kind of the things you need to think about pushing forward in the game as you ultimately go for a victory on the hardest difficulty in Humankind. We'll talk a little bit about city development as well and how to select cultures going into future eras. I also have a bit of an advantage here in that I kind of have a natural breaking point for when I want to think about where my culture is going for the rest of the game. Because before the start of every episode, I sit down and I look at all my cities, I look at my era stars, and I get to think about how I want to pivot my strategy going forward for the rest of the game. So when I'm doing that, right, the first thing I do is open up this menu. I take a look at where am I at with all my era stars. The primary era star right here is displayed on top, and this is the era star that is associated with your affinity for the culture that you've selected for the era. This is the most important star to get because it is worth more fame than the other stars. The one that's associated with your affinity is worth a little bit more, right? As you can see, I would get 250 for my second expansionist star, whereas I would only get 200 for my second scientist star. So it's an incentive for you to kind of pursue the things that are associated with your affinity. As you can see right now, I don't have any merchant stars, and I have a lot of merchant stars to go. I only have one influence star, and I still need like 3,000 influence before my next influence star. The agrarian stars, I also need 16 more population. I'm a little bit behind on militarist stars, but very close to the second one, whereas builder stars and expansionist stars, I'm really quite close. There is a caveat to the expansionist stars that I just want to note, which is that it's based on the maximum number of territories that you've had attached during that era. I actually only have 10 territories that are part of a city right now. So I have 3 in Memphis, I have 3 in Thebes, and I have 4 in Mycenae. The reason that this is displaying as 11 is because I captured a city in this era, and that counts towards the 11. So if I attach another territory right now, I'll actually only still be at 11. So I need to have a total of 2 more attached territories before I get my second era star. So what I'm thinking about right now is how do I get my expansionist stars? And the obvious answer is to go to war. I could attach both of these territories down here to some cities. However, that's going to give me a stability malus on both of these cities when I'm trying to stabilize them a little bit. And I could potentially like settle a city up here. You know, I could click this button to evolve into a city or outpost, but neither of these locations make for a particularly strong city because of the lack of food. I really need to take over Babylon in order to do that. So my strategy to get both the expansionist and militarist stars right now is to go after the brown player. As far as influence and merchant stars, I don't really have much in that direction right now. So my strategy here is to really reorient my cities a little bit around generating some of those stars. So in Mycenae, where I don't have anything being produced, the food market is actually really good. So the food market gives you some extra money on market quarters for adjacent market quarters, as well as a flat bonus. Because I'm playing as the Achaemenid Persians, their emblematic district provides you with some money and is a commercial district. So by building this food market, I increase their value, and it's relatively inexpensive, right? It's only 285 to complete, whereas this market quarter is quite a bit more expensive and takes me additional turns to complete. It's 806. So if I go into Memphis as well, I will probably see roughly the same story. Food market's not quite as good. It actually only provides me with 6 money. And then if I look at Thebes, this one provides me with 8 money. So I'm actually going to go ahead and slide that in there. If I take a look at my tech tree, I've also researched all the techs that are important for the era, basically. So I'm actually going to start moving people onto money over science so that I can make some progress towards that era star. Additionally, a lot of the infrastructure is not very good and provides like flat yields of some kind of output. However, I still find myself building these influence infrastructure regardless of age because it's pretty hard to generate influence and actually generate the influence stars. So I'm actually going to queue up this theater here so that I built that. It's just +4 influence, but it makes a difference over time. and I'm going to do the same thing in Thebes. Mycenae, I will also add that to the queue. And I'm thinking about maybe adding like an artisan workshop. So the artisan workshop is another infrastructure. It provides some extra industry per worker. And more importantly, it actually provides you with some extra worker slots so you can assign more people to industry. I think for now, I'm just going to leave that as it is, and we'll revisit that in a couple turns. I also am thinking about getting these territories kind of set up to eventually be attached to another city. So what I'm going to do is click on this outpost and use this outpost relocation feature. And as you can see, right, you can see if I move it here, I will get extra +1 food and extra +25 production, which is way better than where I'm currently at. So I'm going to relocate that there because I eventually intend to attach it to Thebes. And same thing here, right? And it's actually recommending here because I don't think I've explored where this river is. It's very likely that this river is a much better location. So I'm going to actually grab the swordsman and have them head down here to kind of explore that territory so that I can take a better peek at what the yields are. I can also influence purchase a harbor, which will provide me both a naval spawn point as well as some extra food. And it's recommending this +11 spot, which does look like the best location. So I will influence purchase that harbor. I could also grab a wonder, and Colosseum's not a bad wonder. We talked about this before. I would prefer to save my influence for the next era because there are some really good wonders available. However, you could go all in a little bit on some of the early wonders. Let's end the turn. We currently don't have any grievances against Babylon, so if we're going to go to war with them, we're likely going to do a surprise war. So, are we ready to do that? I think the answer is probably yes. We do have 3 armies, which, if you know how to manage your armies, is typically going to be sufficient for some of the early wars. So, main disadvantage of a surprise war is that you lose war support quite a bit faster. However, if you can take over an opponent quite early or have a lot of like cultural or religious influence over them, it's a lot easier to maintain your war support. You will get the traitor badge for doing so, which just appeared in the bottom left here. So while having this badge, I gain war support when destroying an enemy district. I believe also at some point the trader badge makes sure that you, what's the word I'm looking for? That you don't generate war support when you destroy enemy units. So you do have to kind of keep that in mind. I'm also going to pull these units down a bit because I'm going to initiate that combat. And when I do, these other units are going to lose some of their movement, even if the enemy retreats. So I'm just kind of looking at what the battle zone looks like. And as long as they're in that zone when I initiate the combat, they're going to be inside the reinforcement range, right? So I can move them their full movement and still initiate this combat, and they'll still be able to reinforce. And they actually have more units than I thought they did. However, one thing that the AI is not very good at is recognizing the difference in value between land units and sea units, right? So it says right here that we're evenly matched, but their reinforcements are all these ships. But these ships don't actually do anything. I can just concentrate my forces and completely obliterate my opponent. So this is one way that you can really abuse some of the AI is by taking advantage of the fact that they don't really know how to calculate the relative differences in combat strength. Okay, so we have some horsemen here. We're going to try to destroy these in a single hit with my immortals. We want to guarantee that. So by guaranteeing it, right, you get that little X on the horseman. It was possible I could have killed it in the last hit, but I didn't want to take that risk. So here you can see I get +8 from anti-cavalry because immortals are spear units. I don't have the high ground, so I'm not getting my bastion bonus, but that's okay. And we're going to move all our units up to be adjacent to this river here. Or kind of blocking the river, really. And we're just going to make a drive for the enemy flag, wherever it is. It's back over here. Because what we don't want to do is spend time killing these ships over here. I don't have enough ranged units for that to be worth it. So we'll try to hit these swords as much as possible. And they are on a river. What I'm going to do, I'll pull the Immortals over here. They have enough movement, thanks to my Wonder that I built previously, and just knock those archers out. So because I'm moving through my own units, I'm not getting Zone of Controlled by the Swordsman. So Zone of Control is a 1-tile radius around them, unless you are the Axamites with their special unit, in which case it's a 2-tile zone. And that decreases the total movements that you can take with your units. So I'm going to move some swordsmen there. I'm going to move some archers up so that they can shoot those swords. And then hopefully try to kill them. Got them? Then I'm actually going to pop on the river. There we go. And I'm moving these guys up so they can take pot shots at these swords. I will have one more round of combat to try to destroy them, unless I want this combat to take up another turn. It's not like imperative that I win on this turn. However, it is preferred to win battles as quickly as possible, because otherwise your units stay tied up. You can see they're just kind of running away with their ships. So I can get on the flag there. I'm actually going to move... No, I actually have line of sight here, right? So I was going to move these archers here, but they have line of sight hitting these swordsmen. So I'm good to attack here. If I don't have line of sight, you can see I have -4 from no line of sight. So I'm going to take the shot from there. I'll move you guys up here, and they should also have line of sight because they're elevated above blocking units. And even if they weren't, they can actually kind of fire between units. So if you see a setup like this, if your ranged units are sort of firing between, say, 2 melee units, you don't have line of sight penalty. So I can hit them for my full combat strength. I'm actually probably not going to attack them. Just going to do as much damage as I can. I guess I could probably kill this unit. I'll go ahead and do that. But I don't need to play particularly aggressive here, because I do have the flag, and I will win on this round of combat, win that battle. And there is one of my militarist stars, since I only needed one more star in order to get that, or one more kill in order to get that star. Great. So let's go ahead and end the turn here. What I could do is pull these units back a little bit so that I could heal them. There's apparently going to be a unit here. Okay. I'm still going to pull these units back because I would like to heal this Immortal a little bit before I get aggressive. You can heal units for gold costs with this button here. You could see that it was 28 before. As long as they're in your own territory, you're able to do that. Also pull these units back this way. If they want to come. There we go. And I'm going to initiate another combat. So one thing to keep in mind with initiating combats is, say you want to siege a city. These units are going to reinforce the ones that just retreated if I went for the city. If you force a unit to retreat, they need to wait around or wait a turn before they can reinforce a combat. So if I want to try to siege Babylon, one really easy way to make that work is to force their surrounding armies to retreat on the same turn, and then I can siege Babylon, because then they can't reinforce. I don't need a wonder, but thanks for the reminder. And this guy's just exploring this river for me so that I can see if there's a better place to relocate this outpost, which there is. As you can see, right, pretty significant benefits to relocating right there. I'll eventually attach this to Memphis, and eventually attach Mesquita to Thebes. I don't need to do it quite yet, but that is in the cards for later. Alright, let's move our swordsman up. Take a peek at our policy here. We're actually not building anything. So levy administration, there's quite a few infrastructure like this that just give like some flat small bonus to one of your yields. Levy administration is one of those. It gives +3 money on main plaza, but it does lead to an infrastructure later in the game that can be pretty good. However, right now it's not worth investing in. So I'm thinking we can actually maybe grab the library or the science per population. We don't need animal barns. We're pretty good on food. I'm thinking we actually just start investing in some market quarters. As you can see, we get +14 gold and +4 influence right there, which is a pretty solid investment, a pretty solid ROI. And I keep hitting my desk with my hands. I talked before about kind of specializing cities. And in Memphis, although we have a lot of people on money right now because of the Satrap's Palace that we had built, which is our emblematic quarter, I am thinking about more investing in science in this particular city. And I tend to structure my cities in such a way that I'm investing in one of either money or science. You always need some food or industry baseline. However, also thinking about like this agrarian star right here, right? I need another 13 pop in order to get 2 stars there. So what I should really think about is getting a farmer's quarter such that I can continue to grow, right? So right here, I could get plus 15 for minus 5 industry. I could get plus 13 food for minus 3 industry, or some food and faith over here. What I'm thinking about really is actually this spot right here. I'm currently filling in this area with maker's quarters, and they'll get a lot of adjacency later in the game and get some pretty good yields when I place them down. Whereas I'm not really planning to fill out this area with maker's quarters. So if I put it here, I can maybe get a little bit of farmer's quarter adjacency later. And that's probably true up here as well. So maybe I'll get it up here because this seems like an okay area to me. Whereas down here, there are some like decent maker's quarters still in this area. So maybe I'll fill that with makers later, even though the net food is a little bit lower. Excuse me. So let's go ahead and end the turn. Mikane is still working on that market quarter. Oh, this is actually great timing because they just finished the statue of Zeus. And what that means for me is when I take the city, I will now have the statue of Zeus. They're actually attacking me, which is an interesting choice. Okay, so this is really interesting deployment because there are multiple tiers of high ground. So we have a flag right here that if you look at the terrain here, right, you have to attack up onto the high ground in order to get to that flag. I don't want to deploy in this forwardmost zone. Where I want to deploy these archers is on high ground where it's feasible. And this is actually an even more curious deploy zone. So you can see they have this reinforcement right here, and I can't deploy there. So actually these units down here can't deploy up here. So deployment zones, it feels a little random sometimes, but deployment zones, if you want to deploy them in a part of the deployment zone, they need to be connected in via a path that unit can normally move. So right now, I can't actually put this swordsman up here because there's no path in this green zone. If this square were green, I could deploy any of these units anywhere. However, that's not the option for me. So what I'll need to do is, these units right here are on even ground or high ground. Whereas if I put them here, right, there's only one path up to attack them. So I think I deploy something like this, right? Because if they come to attack these units, they have to attack up onto the high ground regardless of which unit they're attacking. Now their deployment zone, and I might actually take this back a little bit. I suppose they have these reinforcements here, but you can see this little lock symbol because these are the units that retreated on the earlier turns, so they can't actually join in the first round of combat. So they'll only have an envoy, which these swords can definitely handle. And I want these archers to be able to shoot down from the high ground where they'll get some combat strength bonuses. So if I deploy here, these guys can definitely handle that envoy. This guy will likely take an envoy high ground attack, but he has high ground relative to these units that are going to be deploying here. What I can actually do is move these immortals here, because the immortals have the bastion effect, which gives you extra combat strength bonus when fighting from high ground. So we're not going to fuss too much about the deployments. Just make sure our kind of front line is in the correct spot and that our archers in position to shoot. All right. So these noble javelineers hit these immortals, so they're poisoned now. So they have reduced movement speed. However, as you can see here, right, I have +4 from high ground, +3 from friendly units, and +3 from bastion, which is that high ground effect, compared to 20 for the noble javelineers. So a 20 combat strength difference guarantees a kill. So we're just going to go ahead and take that attack. And we can also actually push up here and probably just destroy this envoy, just like this. And our archers can make some high ground attacks from this position against these swordsmen. There we go. So they can't actually get up to where my archers are because of the position of my immortals. And we have no reason at all to be aggressive here, right? We can just wear them down via ranged attacks. And this is something that I talk about pretty frequently in my videos, is the importance of fire superiority just in general, but in particular against the AI. If you have fire superiority, by which I mean a higher concentration of ranged units, particularly if the AI doesn't have any ranged units, they will typically come to you and start making fruitless melee attacks, kind of like they did there, because they know that they're just going to get ground down by archers. So now that I've eliminated that, I can go ahead and assault Babylon since I'm right adjacent to it. And all they're going to have are their home guard here. And they have no deployment area up here. So I'm going to concentrate my archers kind of up in that direction. And I'm probably just going to sit on this high ground here with my immortals where they have some additional combat strength. And I'll kind of shuffle the archers over to the left side here, where they can get uninterrupted views of attacking these units. And they're safe up there, right? Because the only route up to this high ground is through this immortal right here. They otherwise have no means of getting up here. This would be a little different if they had like a district that were at the bottom and the top of the cliff, but they don't have that. So I'm perfectly safe to just move these archers over here like this, where they can have direct line of sight onto enemy units. I'm also going to concentrate my attacks to the extent possible, as long as I'm maintaining direct line of sight. And I think they all have direct line of sight onto this particular tile, so that's what I'm going to pursue. And we'll see if they actually come attack me or not. It seems likely that they will. And they actually had a reinforcing unit that I wasn't aware of. They did a decent bit of damage to the archers. But the archer should be fine. Okay, so what I'll do here is, because I would like to get on this flag in order to secure my victory, I'm going to push some units here, because it takes a full turn of movement to cross over city walls. So by positioning here, as long as I can wear these units down a little bit, I'm actually going to take that attack. As long as I can kill this unit before the immortals cross over or need to cross, I can get on that flag in the next round and eventually win the combat. So they're going to make that melee attack. They're feeling pretty suicidal, which the AI often do. The AI are pretty suicidal in general. So I killed that unit. I can cross over there, and they'll only have one turn to try to take that flag back, which will not be enough time for them to do so. I'm going to pull this immortal out because he's pretty low health. I actually wasn't aware of quite how little health he had left. Then if I move here, I can actually get some rear attacks, right? I talked about this a little bit before. If you have a unit on either side of another unit, you can get some rear attack benefits. And I actually do enough damage to kill them there. So that's Babylon. And they actually managed to found another city over here. So what this means is that we're going to have a little bit of difficulty with this war support, because this is out on an island and kind of hard to access unless we built some naval units. So I am getting some negative ongoing war supports here. I got a bunch from Instant, which is because of enemy units eliminated, as well as a little bit of ongoing because I'm occupying one city. However, I'm getting -6 from territories influenced by an opponent and -2 from declaring unjust war. The unjust war is from the surprise war, and the -6 from territories influenced by an opponent is this stuff, right? When I open this menu in the bottom left, I can see cultural influence over the territories that I see, right, or that I possess. And right now, I have no influence over any of these territories, and apparently there are 6 territories attached to Babylon, which is quite a few territories. So because of that, I'm actually taking a penalty to my ongoing war support. These are likely to change a little bit especially now that I've conquered this city. But I might need to act fast to ensure that I have enough war supports to continue waging war here. I could also consider building some, what are they called? Some ships. I don't have a harbor in Mycenae. I think I have a harbor in here. I actually don't have a harbor in Memphis, so I would need to construct a harbor first, and then I could make some ships. It's a little bit risky to embark units when they have other ships floating around, which is my main consideration. So I'm thinking I maybe get a harbor here, and I can prioritize that over the farmer's quarter. And then maybe I can get a few ships to start to escort some of my units in case that becomes necessary. So you'll see I'll start losing war support pretty quickly here because of that -8 penalty. There is an opportunity to intercept these units here, which I'm going to take. And regardless of whether they retreat or I manage to destroy them in combat, I will get a little bit of war support bonus. So if I open this again, you can see I get +2 from the opponent retreating. I believe, so this independent people right here, I actually have enough to get a treaty with them. So I have 3 options: the trading charter, mercenary charter, or science collaboration. So trading charter basically lets me buy their resources. Mercenary charter lets me hire some of their units, and science collaboration provides me a flat amount of science. I'm actually going to take the trading charter because they have 2 resources, which is incense and ebony. Ebony is really good because it provides extra production, and then incense just provides some flat money. And I would appreciate both of those, especially the incense. So I'm going to sign a trading charter with them. And then what I can do is go to resources and trade, and I can buy both of these things. So incense, we'll go ahead and buy that. There's a decent flat fee, and it increases my maintenance costs, but it overall increases my net money because it is a money resource. Scientific correspondence. I've talked a little bit about this. This player is behind me, and scientific correspondence is only a good option for when you're behind. You don't really want to sign scientific correspondence with the player that is behind you in tech, so I'm going to refuse that. And we also have a civic option here. I almost always take imperialists. So conquered empires, you have 2 options. You have imperialists and anti-imperialists. So anti-imperialists prevents you from vassalizing empires, which we haven't really talked about yet. And you get +20 war support when you win a battle against someone who is an imperialist. Whereas imperialists just get +10 war support after winning a battle, which I find to be the superior option in virtually every situation. So I will take that option. All right. These swordsmen, they're just going to come back and hang out in Mycenae, I think. I don't have a real purpose for them at the moment. We'll end the turn, and I'm actually thinking about using a little bit of money to buy out this harbor in Memphis. And we should continue to pursue this army as well. Since it retreated, it has reduced movement speed, so it's pretty easy to catch. I'm going to move all my other armies up here so that I can reinforce. We'll go ahead and manual battle. There's pretty much no time that I will choose to auto battle. I find it's strictly inferior to managing the battle yourself. So just basic principles here, right? So deploying immortals kind of on high ground where it's available, where they can attack down. Deploying archers on backline where they also have high ground, and then kind of filling in the gaps with swordsmen. I'm anticipating most of their units to be concentrated around the flag, which is why my immortals are kind of closer to that, and my swordsmen are kind of on the outer edges where I expect little to no resistance. Okay, so as you can see, right, I can just blow that chariot up very easily. And then here we're going to have some swordsmen. Now I have no high ground benefits here, so I'm just going to have to do a little bit of damage to them. And I'm actually going to pull my swordsman up, maybe. No. Maybe I'll actually go here, right? Okay, so now I have vision of their archers. I'm going to pull my swordsman up to attack that and take them out. I'm going to use these immortals to attack the swords, I think, because this immortal can't attack these swords. I can pull them over here and attack the archers, and then I can attack downhill onto the swordsmen. And hopefully if I have enough ranged firepower, I can take out these swords without taking any more damage. There we go. So I got plus 18 war support, right? And part of that is because of the Imperialist option, right? So I get plus 10 from winning battles. And then the Mississippians here have lost some units, and I have I've occupied one of their cities, right? So they are losing some war support over time. And in the meantime, right, some of these territories are converting to my culture, so I will start taking fewer penalties to my war supports. I have this option here, fuel or spectacle, so I can get some reduced unit industry cost or increased industry. I'm going to take the increased industry. I believe this one has a chance of negative events. I don't remember exactly. 17 industry isn't like a huge deal at this point in the game, though. I'm thinking that Mycenae, I just need to start... Yeah, I can get some really decent yields here. I can start working on market quarters, and I think this is kind of going to be my market quarter city where I really focus on generating funds, because I would really like to be able to get some of the merchant stars relatively consistently. And by specializing in the city, it means that I can focus my production on things that actually matter to the yields that I want to generate in that city. And I find that's just a way really to increase the value of your production. As far as tech, I talked a little bit about this in the last episode. Once you get these, so hydrology, philosophy, standing army, craftsmanship, and rhetoric, once you get those techs, everything else is just kind of there. Most of these other techs are not going to have a huge impact on your game. So what I'm going to do is probably just go for siege tactics to set up seafaring mastery for the next era, and then start working on siege tactics. All right. So I like to monitor the ongoing war support. They're losing 4 per turn. So they're going to take 6 turns before they're at 0 war support, and I can request their surrender. I'm taking -5 ongoing. I will never completely eliminate that, but it will be reduced in the coming turns as well once I culturally convert that territory. They also have this envoy running around here, which is not a great idea for them, because envoys you can actually get war support from. You get +2 from them retreating. And if you win a battle against an envoy, you can actually get war support as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind with the envoys as well, is that you actually don't want them running around near enemy territory whenever you have declared a war, simply because it's an easy way for your opponent to farm more support. Okay. Those swordsmen are idle. And over in Mycenae, I think just in case, we're going to prepare a full-sized navy in case we need to pursue anything. And over in Thebes, I'm thinking about getting just a handful of market quarters, even though I think I would normally specialize Thebes into science a little bit, particularly like down in this area right here. However, I am struggling a lot more with my merchant stars than I am with my science stars. So I think I'm going to focus on the merchant stars. And I think I could also, I could get a really good Maker's Quarter right here. That's +29 total yields. And that +10 influence is going to make a big difference. So I'll start with the Maker's Quarter first, and then we'll go into the Market Quarter. And hopefully that will help me along towards generating some of my era stars. So one thing I absolutely don't want to do is embark these units. They have a pretty large army running around. They have also brought this envoy back, so I can go ahead and attack them. And because they retreated last round, they won't be able to retreat this round. So I'm basically guaranteed to get some more support here, because envoys are incredibly weak units that aren't really meant to be involved in combat. See, I gained +12, and they lost 2. If I look here, they have the -4 ongoing and an additional -2 from units lost. I've recovered a bit of my own. So I'm very unlikely to need to go attack Sipar because of the amount of war score that I have. So I can basically just wait for the clock to run out on this one and then try to resolve the war. I've also managed to get a merchant star. partly thanks to myself specializing in a little bit more of the merchant stuff. However, I do need to worry about my agrarian stars. One thing to bear in mind, though, with agrarian stars is that you actually get a population from the territories that you take over. So when I take over Babylon, that'll contribute a little bit as well. I've also reached the second tier of tenant, which is from having 65 followers. As you can see, I'm doing pretty well on religion. There are basically only 2 religions left at this point, and I'm spreading quite nicely. So I have 65, which means I get the second tier of tenant. And there are several options here. But really, there are only 3 real options, I would say. And largely, I would say there are only 2 real options. Fear Not False Witness and Give Alms are going to be the tenants that you want to take 98% of the time. So +5 science on research quarter and +5 money on market quarter are basically way better than every single other option in this tier. There's almost no reason not to take one of these 2. And generally, the one I like to take is the one that best supplements my strategy, or the one that helps me generate era stars that I'm struggling with. So say I've gone with the 2 merchant cultures at the start of the game. Say I went like Nubians into Axumites. The Give Alms tenant can be really, really strong because I already have a lot of market quarters. Alternatively, say I've taken several cultures that are not very efficient at generating money, and I would like to start generating money. Give Alms can be good if I want to pivot into that because it makes my market quarters a lot more efficient. Kind of the same thing with Bear Not False Witness, right? If I'm struggling with tech, I can take this, or alternatively, if I've taken like Babylonians and Greeks, right, I can get a ton of science by choosing Bear Not False Witness. The other options here are Protect the Weak, and Protect the Weak is also pretty decent. You can get that +5 stability on Garrison. That's really why you want to take this, is if you're struggling to manage your stability and you're pursuing a Garrison strategy, Protect the Weak can help kind of plug the gap until you get access to better technologies and better infrastructure in order to support your stability. So overall, Bear Not False Witness and Give Alms are like the S tier of the tenants, and I would say they're probably some of the best tenants in the game. Tier 1 and Tier 2 are the most impactful. Protect the Weak is like an A tier tenant, and is one you can pick if you need to like plug that gap. Observe Fast is not very good. +5 food on Harbor does not amount to very much food. Like mid to late game, this is like 1 population if you have 3 harbors. So this thing sucks. Undertake Pilgrimage. The reduced cost of enacting and canceling civics can save you for some influence, but influence is also not that important late game. I will sometimes take this one if all these other ones are taken. I would strictly place them below Bear Not False Witness, Give Alms, and Protect the Weak. And then Yield to None, the +10 war support on Grievance trigger. So basically when you get a grievance, you get +10 war support. It can help you declare formal wars more easily. However, it's generally pretty easy to declare formal wars, and it's also pretty easy to win surprise wars. And with changes to the war system, it actually makes formal wars less important, because when you reach 0 war supports, you can still keep fighting. And the main detriment of a surprise war is that it's possible to get to 0 war support more easily. So this one has actually kind of declined in value, in my opinion. So I'm going to take Give Alms, and the main reason for this is A, that I'm struggling a little bit to generate my merchant stars, but also as the Achemenids, this +5 money on market quarter applies to my emblematic quarter, right? So I'm going to get a decent amount of money right at the start. I think I'll get something like, what is it? It would be like 40 or something like that, 45 money. Just from taking Give Alms, and it'll continue to apply to all my market quarters the rest of the game. So I'm going to grab Give Alms, and that'll increase my money generation a little bit. And again, right, like if I look at the market quarters now, this was, +15 before, and now it's +20. It really makes those quarters a lot more effective. It's a huge increase in the amount of outputs. Okay. So we're basically waiting for this war to finish. They need a couple more turns before I can ask them to surrender. I'm also going to refuse scientific correspondence. And I should take a look around to see if I have any grievances that are just kind of sitting there. Yeah, I have a few grievances with the Carthaginians here. I'm going to renounce all of those, because that will hopefully get me a little bit of of the leverage that I need in order to generate diplomat stars. It's pretty unlikely that I'm going to get them this era. I'm also going to refuse that demand because that's an insane demand. And I'm just going to check and make sure that I don't have any other crises that I can forgive. I do find, again, the diplomat stars are a little bit challenging to get. I just think it's kind of bad scaling. All right, so I'm at the point where I'm researching my last few techs. I'm just going to get siege tactics because it leads into military architecture, whereas mounted warfare and fortifications don't actually lead to anything. It's pretty common that I skip both of those techs. There's an aesthete era star, and I need one more tech for my scientist star. And I need a few more territories. I'm going to refuse their war deal because that doesn't give me the territory that I want. And then as far as Mycenae goes, we're kind of below the high stability threshold. I'm actually going to grab the public found. No, the City Watch is actually slightly more production efficient, I think. They're about the same. I'm going to put them both in. Because I would like to maintain high stability here, because when you have high stability, your population generates extra influence. And then after that, I'm still doing okay on food, but I'm going to start running out pretty quickly. And this is, yeah, that's a really nice food tile. Plus 20 food can sustain a handful of pops. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that farmer's quarter there so that I can keep growing, because I'm bearing in mind that I would like to get these agrarian stars too, if at all possible. As far as the aesthete stars, I need another, roughly 3,000 and a bit influence there. So I'm thinking, right, that's another, 9 or 8 turns or something like that. And then for my second merchant star, I need about 3,300 or so. And that's also about another 11 turns. So really what I want to try to do is increase my money output as much as possible, because that is the one that I'm lagging behind on the most. So this customs farm, I can actually get plus 14 money there. So customs farm gets me money from ongoing trade, which would include the trade that I'm doing with the city-state right here. And then over in Thebes, I'm also working on that market quarter. And I think maybe I just grab an extra market quarter here and kind of pivot Thebes into being a little bit more market-oriented rather than science-oriented, since I am doing pretty well on science for the game. I should also consider some stability in here as well, so I'm going to queue up both the public fountain as well as the city watch. There's our agrarian star, and we can also ask for round surrender here. And this is different in the new patch in Achilles. So it used to be that your war score is tied to your war support. That is no longer the case. It is basically tied to the things that you have occupied or done during the war. So if you are occupying a city like this, where I'm occupying Babylon, I can kind of find it organized under the city name. They actually have more cities than I realized. But I will always have enough war score to demand all the territories that I occupy. In this case, it's just Babylon. I'm going to ask them for their surrender, and they're going to accept. They've actually made it to the New World. That's quite interesting. It was very close to them. They were actually able to get there without ever going into deep ocean. So they're going to be a longer-term problem because I won't be able to get over there for quite a while unless I declare another war and move through their territory. So that's something to think about. Actually, I'll be glad that I'll have some late-game trouble with them. I'm going to renounce that trespassing demand just so that I can get a little bit more leverage, though, and try to make some progress towards that era star. And then in the meantime, Babylon. It is now my city. I've gotten a little bit of extra towards the agrarian stars. I'm probably not going to get 12 more population. You never know, though. We can always try. I am going to start with some of the basic infrastructure that hasn't been built. So flood irrigation is always a really important one. And I'm actually just going to buy that because I have enough money to do that. And I want to get this city running as quickly as possible. Just get all this basic infrastructure in here that they have failed to build. Then I'm also going to grab the theater so that I can get a little bit of extra influence and try to keep up on those relevant era stars. There's also been some rebels that have spawned here due to an extended period of low stability. We can come try to intercept them with our units here. Let's take a look at our era stars. Now that we've taken Babylon, we've gotten all the expansionist stars. We've killed enough units to get the militarist stars. We're really working on agrarian, merchants, and aesthetes. Our science stars are almost complete. They're going to go ahead and attack me, actually. But this should be a pretty easy battle. I think they can only attack me via this one spot right here. I'm not going to worry too much about deployment zones because I'm not really worried about them doing any serious damage. Excuse me. Go ahead and hit them there. You can knock those swords out. It looks like they're probably attacking downwards. So yeah, I can't see them because they're on higher elevation than I am, and that can get a little old. So if they're up like 2 elevation from you, you can't see those units, whereas 1 elevation, I believe you can. And in this case, they are up at least 2 units of elevation from me. Okay, so I'll take those rebels out. So now we're barreling towards the end of the era. We'll just start on fortifications because we would like to try to get at least a couple more of these stars. Aesthete stars, we need another 2.5k. And then merchant stars, we need a little bit more than that. We're going to try to get some money before the end of the era here. And we're just going to buy out that farmer's quarters so that we have that complete. And that way we can return to focusing on some more market quarters down here. I'm just going to double check that there aren't any like major infrastructure that I'm missing that would generate me a bunch more money. And just grab that food market quickly, and maybe we grab like a single market quarter. This one's actually not bad because it's adjacent to this sage here and adjacent to the satrap's palace, so it's getting a little bit of adjacency bonus. And then the Celts want to trade luxuries. I don't really have anything that I'm interested in. I suppose the Sage would be fine, but they're basically my next war target. There's also been an independent people that spawned here. I'm going to go ahead and establish contacts. It looks like they've been around for a little while longer than I thought. I am going to start investing a little bit of influence, but I don't want to invest gold because that will come out of my progress towards those merchant stars. So let's refuse that trade resources offer, and I'm actually going to position my units to try to take care of them a little bit. And then I'm just going to make sure I'm actually trading resources here. Okay, I'm not. The trade route seems to have been interrupted, so let's make sure we're getting those. And I also believe I have a trade agreement here. And I'm going to double check if there's anything I want. Yeah, so there's gemstones right here, which is really good because gemstones increase the amount of money that you get on market quarters. And I potentially want pearls as well, just because that increases the amount of money that you're getting on your traders. So you can see I'm getting +3 money from traders there. So hopefully that'll increase my progress towards that star a little bit. And then finally, the last tech is mounted warfare. And we probably want to delay until we're at least 3 aesthete stars. We're getting pretty close to that. So we're going to kind of overflow on science a little bit. We could maybe go for a war declaration against the Celts here. It would be pretty easy to knock them out. And the other consideration is that I am below my city cap at the moment. And ideally, you want to be at least 1 city above your city cap at all times. And the reason for that is that the penalty for being only 1 over your city cap is like -10 influence, which is basically negligible. And typically I'm looking at being +2 over your city cap. Let's see. Probably just put people on money in Babylon for now. Ideally, they only have 1 astronomy house in here. They didn't do a very good job of building their emblematic district. We still can't build any of our core districts yet because of the stability malice that we're getting from it being a occupied territory. Maybe we do build like some insane religious districts because we want some more faith pressure over here so that our religion can keep expanding. So I actually think I'm fine with that. We'll have it work on Obelisk while it recovers some of its stability. The other benefit to kind of delaying our era progress here is that it'll give me the opportunity to build some of the emblematic districts. So I'm only 1.6k away from Aesthete, and I'm only about 1200 away from the Money Stars. So it's only a few more turns before I can get both of those. And that's kind of why I'm choosing to delay. I could also maybe just surprise war, and I am getting like placated. But the thing about warring people, yeah, they're really going to occupy this entire continent here. That'll be difficult. I'll basically have this continent secured, and they'll have this continent secured, so they're probably going to be the final boss of this game. So what I can do, though, is I'm just going to refuse that demand. If I declare war and I've occupied all of their territory, they basically suffer an immediate collapse in war score. And I can actually attack them right from where I am. I do find the Celts to be kind of challenging because of the number of units that they can turn out, but I would really like to occupy Harappa before I go into the next era. I'm just going to go ahead and attack them. And this should be a pretty decent fight here. Okay. So I have some archers up on the high ground. I do want to concentrate forces as much as possible. I'm going to pull units kind of off the river because they're a little bit on the vulnerable side. And kind of have my archers arranged on the high ground up over there. Under deployment, we also have this thing here. We can kind of hover over these icons in the upper right to show you what the outcomes are going to be. Minus 10 stability is not really going to affect me, so I'll go ahead and grab that extra production boost. Okay. Can't see anyone. So what I'll do is push these units forward, and that'll give me line of sight of these Gazzetti, which are the Celts emblematic units. Gazzetti are interesting because their special effect basically is that they don't suffer any combat penalties from being at low health. So it doesn't get any easier to kill them as they go down in health. And I'm going to play very conservatively here. I really don't have any reason to try to attack them with my melee units because I have fire superiority for the time being. And it looks like I'm encountering a little bit of a bug here. Yeah, sometimes it can take a minute for their units to come in. I actually didn't realize that they had a reinforcement up there. So a little bit of a mistake because I left my units vulnerable. And I also didn't realize that they could get up onto the terrain there. So a few deployment errors, but it should be fine. So what we'll do is pull some of these units back. Remember, these immortals have high ground attack benefits, right? That +3 from Bastion. So I can just nail those Gazzetti, partly because they are on a river, right? So very, very easy to destroy those units for me. And then this archer, I'm going to pull that back into a city. And these Gazzetti will be a little bit more difficult to attack. They are on a river, so I can get some pretty decent attacks on them. I'm just going to try to distribute the damage as much as I can. I can also get a rear attack here. But basically the idea is when you're taking damage among your melee units, oftentimes it's better to try to distribute the damage among as many units as you can, rather than concentrating the damage on a single unit. And that's partly just because of the somewhat unpredictable nature of combat. There are times where it's better to concentrate damage on a single unit where you can. And I would say that is largely in a situation where you have like a small choke point and you're basically just cycling units in and out of that choke point. In this case, that is not what's happening. Let's see. I would like to be able to kill these swordsmen here. I'm going to try to... I'm getting zone of control there. I'm going to pull one unit up there. And I can actually get into the city with these immortals, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to pull these immortals up to give some adjacency benefits, right? So now I'm getting +1, and I can guarantee a kill on these citizens here. So I'm going to take that attack. Some archers there. I'm going to pull maybe one set of immortals over this way in case I need them, since they have more units over there. And then just kind of stack immortals up on this side and try to enter the walls and get into their city. So this is going to stretch out into another turn, which is totally fine. These larger battles will tend to do that because there's only so many units you can kill on a single turn. Meanwhile, over in Memphis, we still need the charcoal kiln, which will actually be fairly productive here. So the charcoal kiln gives you extra industry on Maker's Quarters, and we do have a decent number of Maker's Quarters in here. Also thinking maybe we grab an extra one of these. And I know it says 22 down here, but I kind of want to conserve these spots for market quarters. So I'm going to take like a higher efficiency one over here. So like that +18 is pretty good. And over in Thebes, we're all good there. And yeah, we actually are getting attacked here by someone I thought we had a non-aggression pact with, which we no longer do. I'm still going to renounce all those demands because I'm not really interested in going to war with them quite yet. And I would like to try to get those diplomat stars. So when you renounce demands, that effect doesn't actually appear until the next turn. So you can see we have 55, now we have 75. I don't know if I'll be able to get that. It seems unlikely. But we're going to try. Okay. So we have some archers that have appeared here. We're going to try to kill them just with our own archers. And the reason for that is that way that unlocks the ability of this immortal to step in right here. And then I can get several melee attacks rather than just one. This guy needs to retreat. This is one of the benefits of having high movement. I'm going to let the swordsmen sit here. I know there's another archer up here, and I don't want to put them at risk of dying. It's incredibly unlikely, but I do kind of assess that as a possible risk if I make that attack. So I'm just going to let them attack me. Okay. The Gazzetti have found me, unfortunately. I'm just going to instant resolve that. Usually if your unit gets caught, your envoy, they're just dead. So I wouldn't bother trying to fight those battles. And again, I can just wipe those citizens off the face of the earth very easily. Okay. So here's their archers. We can go ahead and attack them. And we can take out the swordsmen with our own immortals. And that'll do it. So I got a whole bunch of war support there. Their war support, it looks like it's not going to, but it will collapse at the end of this turn, right? Because they have no more cities left. So we can... Let's make sure they're offering everything here. Are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are. So they're just offering a full-scale surrender, which is fine. This is exactly what I would have demanded anyway. So now we have yet another city. And I've apparently discovered a wonder. There is a place down there. So that's good to know, because a lot of these kind of outlying islands have some pretty useful resources. So I'm just going to queue up a horseman to kind of go explore that and eventually settle an outpost there. This outpost has actually come online as well, and I can influence purchase a couple things here. So including the ebony, which will increase my industry, and the ambergris, which will increase my science. And I might as well get a dock here as well. Let's take a look at our era progress. So another 4K to merchant stars is pretty unlikely. However, we only need another 800 influence, which is like 2 more turns. So in this case, right, if we look at the available cultures, only 2 have been taken. So this is something I'm always thinking about, right, is how many cultures have been taken? Which of the cultures that have been taken are ones that I want? And how likely are cultures that I want to be taken, or how likely are cultures that I want to be taken by another player? So right now, if I hover over this fame, I can see the 6th place player has 6 of the 7 era stars required to go up, Once they get 7, I know it's possible that they're able to take one of the cultures that I'm interested in. However, they're not there yet. The 5th place player is not particularly close, and the 4th place player is like nowhere close, right? So at most, there's maybe one other culture here that can be taken before I manage to get there. So in this case, right, even though I'm delaying my science, I have plenty of time to try to get some of these stars that I want in order to ensure that I'm getting the maximum possible fame. So Babylon, I need one more turn here before I can start producing the emblematic quarter. So what I'm going to do is just grab one of the basic infrastructure. I'll probably grab the food market, even though it doesn't produce me anything right now, because I'm going to buy a bunch of the satrap's palace once that becomes available. And then in Harappa, we're going to start with the flood irrigation, because that's plus 50 food, which is insane. And then this has really low stability, so I'm going to grab the public fountain and then maybe queue up the city watch. All right, and we've actually managed to get one of the agrarian stars because we've taken over Harappa, which had a very high amount of population. And we've also gotten civics osmosis. So civics osmosis occurs when one of your territories has the culture of another player that has a different civic than you do. In this case, it's a little silly because they've basically been wiped out, and I'm about to convert all those things. If I refuse this, I get a minus 50% or minus 50 stability malice. And in this case, I'm going to refuse it because I really don't want the reduced unit industry cost. I don't want to change that, and I value the influence a little bit more. And I can just buy out some of these things to return stability back to normal, and then produce a few garrisons, which will give me some extra stability. I've talked about this before, but I tend to just place garrisons in kind of out-of-the-way locations where I'm unlikely to develop any other things. And then in Babylon, we can make some very efficient satraps palaces. Look at these. These are great satraps palaces. I suppose we can make that one there. I'm just going to take the suggested locations. And I think I'm going to move some people onto industry in here, just so we produce these a little bit more efficiently. And this horseman is going to make its way down here so that I can secure that territory. And we also have a civic available for slaves. So I can get extra food on farmer's quarter and extra industry on maker's quarter per adjacent commons quarter, or extra food and industry on farmers and workers on Victorious City. So Victorious City, I can see right here, basically when you win a war, you get some extra stability and the victorious thing. I tend to go for, where is it? This one right here, the extra food and industry on Victorious Cities, because I don't use commons quarters much anymore. But there are some commons quarters strategies where this could be quite good if you're using commons quarters to support your stability, or if you've taken the Assyrians in the ancient era and perhaps the Romans in the classical era where you have some commons quarters already. I'm going to take war slaves though, just because that'll benefit me right away and continue to benefit me for the rest of the game, whereas I don't have very many commons quarters. And then there's quite a few leverages sitting around. I'm thinking I can quickly grab an envoy. Actually, what I could do is purchase a garrison and use that as the spawn point, and then purchase the envoy. And then the envoy can make direct progress there, and hopefully I can beat the other player to that location. And then Thebes currently is not working on anything. I don't need any stability. Get some extra industry. I'm already over kind of my threshold for the classical era industry, which is 400. So I'm thinking maybe I just build out a couple more market quarters rather. And then over in Memphis, I'm thinking maybe I just get some research quarters so I'm prepared for the next era. I'm going to do these two because that one's on a river and I might want that river tile a little bit later. Take a look here. Yeah, we're pretty close to some of these era stars, actually. And our money's only increasing. So I would only need 2,500 roughly, right? For my merchant star, which I could get in pretty short order. And since I'm not, I'll fall behind a little bit on tech, but it's nothing that I can't catch up on. I also have punishments available, so I can get extra money per population or extra stability per population. I think both of these are viable. The main consideration here is I have pretty good stability in most of my cities already, and I don't want the extra faith on territory. I want the extra science. So I'm going to enact forfeiture for the money, and that'll also help me get this merchant star a little bit faster, because I do actually have enough time in this situation in order to get it. Looks like I'm not going to beat anyone to some of these pickups, so maybe let's try to go for some of the grievances that have spawned down here. And there's a cod. Nothing I can really do there. Let's see if I can get any more treaties with Sus. I cannot. I should maybe increase my influence contribution here so that I get up to the next tier. I would like to try to make them a client state if I could at all. And then I could talk about, in later episodes, a little bit more about what a client state really means. Okay, I'm going to grab the animal barns because I'm going to start running out of food here. And could get a charcoal kiln, but I think I'm just going to get my industry up in preparation for the next era, because we are getting close to that merchant star threshold. And down here, I'm thinking maybe one more industrial quarter. 26 industry is pretty good. I'm kind of taking this turn by turn until I get this last merchant star, which should maybe only be this one more turn. Okay, let's just queue up some of this basic industry that I know I'm going to need in Mycenae. And then Harappa, we're still a little ways away from actually being able to build some of the emblematic quarters. I'm going to buy this last one, and then I'm going to do a little bit of funny stuff with these last quarters so that I'm prepared to go up to the next era. So there's that merchant star, and I should have done this a little bit earlier. What you can do with the emblematic quarters is, as long as there's a little bit of industry in them, they will save to the next era. So you can put one turn of industry into each emblematic quarter, and then come the next era, you're still going to be able to actually continue to build them. Harappa, we're not going to do it extensively, but Babylon, we have enough time to get a turn of production into each of these satraps' palaces, and then we can preserve them into the next era. Okay, they're just going to keep attacking my envoy here. Oh, I'm actually at war with them, which I did not realize. I didn't realize they had declared war on me. So this is interesting. What I'm going to do is queue up a small army here. And these guys will be able to come over and reinforce Mycenae. In the meantime, Mycenae is actually going to need to fend for itself. And I'm going to put the citizens on the front line here. And basically what I will need to do is just sit here and take attacks until I can reinforce with the rest of my units. Actually pillaging one of my things here. Somehow I missed that they had declared war on me. I assume it's because I refused one of their demands. But we should be able to take these guys pretty easily. Kind of a weird time for them to declare war on me. I'm used to the AI being kind of afraid to do that. Okay, so these war elephants are pretty strong. We don't really want to deal with them. I might shuffle some units here. I'm going to pull that guy back. I'm going to move that immortal there and move the swordsman into the fortifications, because these immortals have combat strength bonuses against mounted units. Take an archer shot, and then we can kill that war elephant. And then I'm not going to attack with that unit there. He's purely defensive, but I will attack with this one because he has the bastion. Right, they have Gazzetti, so basically the AI has an arms deal with the player that was producing the Gazzetti, which is a little bit annoying. You can kill these archers in one hit. And we're just going to sit still because we have one more turn before we need to win this combat. And we can attack from the high ground there, and with all the combat strength bonuses I get, that'll be done and dusted. And over here, seems like they... Okay, they're moving their forces down in this direction. One of the benefits of them trying to attack right away is actually that the elephants can't cross into the city. I can whack those archers. They are very bad at managing archer location. So all they have to attack with are these swordsmen. Otherwise, I'm just like waiting for these units to go away. And we have this horseman down here. We have a couple locations to place our outposts, and that'll get us access to a few more resources. And then over here, I'm just going to queue up maybe the stoneworks for a little extra production and the artisan workshop. We're actually running out of stability here. I think probably because of trade route interruptions on Mycenae. I think this will probably recover. So I'm not going to worry about stability quite yet. And maybe grab the library in there so we have a little bit of science. And then Babylon. Yeah, I think all these other ones, they all have a little bit of production in them. So we'll wait one more turn, and then these satraps' fallacies will be queued up and kind of in the production queue, and then we can think about who we want to take for the next era. Nothing we can really do about this combat for now. We don't want to fight the elephants with the units we have, but we do have some units coming up to reinforce. And I'm not used to this thing. I'm going to take the extra land and naval movement speed, I think. Even though it moves me more towards the faith, towards territory, but movement speed is really valuable. Okay, so we've gotten most of our stars here. And we're going to push down towards Aojing since they've declared war on us and we have an army in position to go after them. And could maybe think about trying to buy out a satrap's palace here. I don't know if it's worth it. I think those two that I have in queue are probably fine. And we're just going to move all of our units. Just get this guy out of there, actually, before we talk about who you want to take for the next era. Buy a couple of these artisans' quarters, and that will actually improve our stability a little bit. And we can buy a harbor as well. Suppose that guy will need to come down this way. So you can see there's a lot of high ground terrain, so I can't like move down towards Haojing right now. And then Memphis, maybe grab the public fountain just to maintain a little bit of stability, and probably the aqueduct in here. And then, you know, looking at our stars, right, we've done great. We've delayed our era up, but generally my sort of benchmark for the ancient era and classical era are turn 50 and turn 100 respectively, and we're still kind of ahead of schedule for that. So realistically, I think generally around turn 90 is a pretty good benchmark for going up into the medieval era, and there are a whole bunch of options still available. So what we want to think about in the medieval era, again, is like, how do we best align our culture pick to our long-term strategy, as well as to our areas of weakness, right? So we can say either pursue a strategy that goes all in on one particular output. So you might choose, say, several scientist cultures over the course of the game to really amp up the amount of science that you're producing, or industry, right? If you took like the Egyptians into the Maya. Or you can try to generate a larger breadth of resources over the course of the era. And that's generally what I like to try to do, is try to balance my outputs to try to maximize the amount of fame that I get. Because as you can see, right, like it took quite a few extra turns to get these merchant and aesthete stars after I had already completed all of my technology. So in order to maximize fame, I do like to spread it out a little bit, but again, it depends, right? Like these Aztecs, for instance, are a militarist culture, but they have some really, really good bonuses. And part of getting those era stars is actually just conquering other cultures, right? So sometimes something like the Aztecs is a really good option if you just need that little extra oomph in order to go forth and conquer. Aztecs overall are like a pretty good culture, particularly because of the legacy trait is the main reason you want to pick them. What I may be thinking for this upcoming one is maybe actually the Franks, the extra influence wouldn't go to waste. The main problem with taking the Franks is that you get the extra plus 10% influence, but also because you're an aesthete, your goal is larger, right? So your primary Aristar goal is always higher than it would be if you were some other affinity. So if you're a scientist culture, you need more than the 24 technologies. I couldn't tell you exactly how many. So it actually becomes harder to get those stars. And like the plus 10% influence is not really like enough to make up for the difference in stars. So the Ghanaians are like, they would be good if I have a lot of trade routes, which I currently don't. The Teutons are like a decently designed culture, but I'm not really struggling militarily this game, and that's kind of what they're organized around. I'm actually thinking the Khmer are one of the best cultures really in the medieval era and possibly in the game. They would also be very good here because of the amount of river that I have. The English would be pretty solid. The extra food on attached territory, the Stronghold, which is a garrison that exploits food, and the Longbowmen are all quite good. Rapa Nui could potentially be okay because of the industry on coastal water. Swahili are a good option if you have a lot of coast because of the stability that they generate. And medieval, I find the hardest to keep high stability. And then the Taino are also really good for food generation as well as a little bit of extra stability. And then the Norsemen are pretty strong if you are playing in a game where New World is on. So you can kind of shuffle over to the New World and start securing territories over there. What I'm thinking for this game is just to make things a little bit more interesting, is to not contest the brown player in terms of settling the New World, such that there's a bit of an endgame boss for me to deal with, and that'll let me show off some additional mechanics. So I'm not going to take the Norsemen this game, even though the Norsemen are like an S tier culture when you're playing in a game with New World. So Taino can be good, but they are a DLC culture, so I think I'm going to stay away from them. So I think I'm going to choose between either the English or the Khmer. And realistically, the Khmer are probably the best option for me, just due to the amount of river that I have available. So you'll see with the Khmer, the Bere, they exploit food and industry, and they get extra industry per adjacent river. And the legacy trait gives them +3 industry on Maker's Quarters, which I have a lot of. So I'm going to take the Khmer. It's been a while since I've played them. And just to kind of like give you a little bit of a preview of how strong these can be, right? If I put this here, 18 food and 41 production, right? Which is insane. Here, 12 food, 37 production. If I go over to Babylon, 27 food and 40 production. Harappa, I can't place anything yet because I'm in negative stability again, but we'll get around to it. So that's just kind of a preview of where this is going and our preparation for taking on Mama Aklo here, who will be our final boss for this game. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. These are some we're getting away from some of the very basic concepts and thinking a little bit more strategically and higher level about how to progress your game. So I hope that's a little bit more helpful than some of the discrete topics as well. So thank you, and I'll see you soon.